Let's make a start. Thanks for joining us this morning. Great to see you all again. Can you believe it's been nearly 4 weeks since we were together in London? Isn't that amazing? Nearly 4 weeks. So let's kind of get ourselves back on track in terms of the program. I'll do a quick contracting bit of a framework, set us up, and then we'll take some feedback on how you've been finding things since our first session. So before we start, I'm just going to give you a moment. It's 9:30. I'm sure you've already been hard at it this morning before we started this session. So if there's anything on your mind, just take a moment to capture it. If there's anything you need to pick up either immediately after or not during, immediately after at some point today, just take a moment to capture your thoughts, get it out of your head, get it onto a pad. Just give you that mental freedom to join our session this morning without any baggage. And while you're doing that, I'll also remind you of our Zen Buddhism principle around the beginner's mind. So this is just about recognizing that these sessions are all about layering on top of everything you already know. We're layering on top of your skill, experience, all of the knowledge that you already have, and helping you to kind of elevate to the next level. That's the whole principle, elevate to the next level. And when it's appropriate, just grab some notes or a notepad, put a mark at the top of a clean page, just some key takeaways for today, because you'll, from each other and from the conversation, there'll be just a few nuggets that you'll capture that hopefully will be useful for you between now and the next session. So capture key takeaways in a way that's best for you. And just a reminder of our contract. So we are recording the session this morning, but I will kind of ask us all to contract again for this confidentiality, so that we may talk about things that are sensitive, that are particular to you, your business, your team. So I'd like you all to just join me in that contract of confidentiality for everything we discuss in these sessions. And if there's anything that's particularly sensitive and you'd rather it was off the recording, just give me a nod or tell me, Justin, could you pause for a second? I'll pause the recording, and then we can discuss that topic, and then we'll set the recording up again. So if we want something that's off the record, like truly off the record, then we can do that. But in terms of this recording, all I'll do with it is host it and send you the link so that you can review it if there's anything on there that you found particularly useful and you want to revisit. Okay, and questions as we go along, as we did in our in-person session. And hopefully you're already starting to sense between you and your accountability partner and this group, a pretty safe zone and a community of people that are all kind of on the same journey to make the improvements in leadership that we all are looking to achieve on a regular basis. We're together until 11. We'll take a short 5-minute break somewhere in the middle, just to kind of stretch your legs, comfort break, grab a drink, that sort of thing, because it is particularly warm today. And we've got some topics to discuss today, so I've got an agenda. We will stay on track, but if there's anything we need to pick up, then I can do that, pick it up offline and put it in our car park. Okay. So I've talked about these before. This is everything we're going to work through as we go through our 12 months together. But really, we're looking at this coaching approach to leadership. That's the key here. How do we take this coaching approach to leadership so we're elevating performance of our teams? And you're doing that through not only these workshops, but hopefully you're finding this useful in terms of your accountability partners, the one other person that you're working with. So a reminder, you guys know this: Gemma and Seb, Ria and Oliver, Iram and Matt, Stancy and Tim, Abby and Chris, and Nicola and John. Is that everyone okay with your accountability partners? Yeah, going okay?
Yeah, really well.
Good. Have you all had the chance to catch up outside of our workshops?
No, Iram and I haven't, because we were both bombed out for a week or two afterwards, and then I was on holiday. So we've got our first call scheduled tomorrow, and then we've got a 2-weekly cadence booked in after that.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Excellent. Great. Everyone else, how are you guys getting on with your conversations, or just the opportunity to check in about your leadership?
Yeah, Abby and I have met, which went well. So yeah, and we've got another date booked in. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Abby. Super.
Oliver and I have spoken quite a lot on email, and we had a call on Monday, and we've got calls already set in around the time that we'll be meeting, and we'll just maneuver them as and when. But yeah, it's been helpful.
Just every 2-3 weeks, then keeping up to date on emails.
Ah,
it's good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Oliver. Thanks, Ria. That's super.
Yeah, Nicola and I have had our first catch up yesterday, so we couldn't meet up before because of holidays and everything else that was going on. So we met up at our first catch up yesterday via Teams, and then we've got a weekly session booked in every Friday to catch up.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nicola. Well done. Good work. Good work. Who else is there?
Gemma and I have been pretty regularly texting, and we've been keeping in touch. Yeah.
We had quite similar kind of experiences. We had we were contracting with our teams around the same week, so we just sort of shared like kind of setups and approaches and followed up with that actually, which was really helpful.
Excellent. So you're going through the same process
Exactly.
at the same time, but with your brilliant. Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, Seb. We'll take that. Sounds interesting. We'll take some feedback on how those contracting conversations went shortly as well. Who else have we got? Stancy and Tim. How about you guys?
Yeah, we had our first catch up last Friday, and we had a very similar conversation to Seb and Gemma about contracting and how to almost pitch that amongst people that you have longer term kind of relationships with. So to try and make it not too formal, but to try and hit that right kind of message that it's kind of an open door policy, and if you need support and guidance or anything like that, then come and see us. But also to set out some kind of ground rules and expectations and things like that. But it's trying to hit the happy medium by not being too formal, but also making it clear that there are standards and expectations and that kind of thing.
How was that received out of interest?
I haven't done mine yet, so this is why it was so good to speak to Stancy first, because
I'm doing mine. Yeah, we're doing ours sort of fairly soon, but myself and Chris actually had a follow-up meeting about what we're going to do. Yes, I mean, Tim and I shared some sort of really good ideas actually, so it was really good to have the accountability partner, especially someone who's not in the same industry. I found sort of really helpful because people I just don't know at all. But yeah, we're going to sort of implement, and it was probably I brought it up with Tim because I'm really struggling with people I've worked with for years to say, actually, do you know what, I'm going to contract you now. This is how things are going to be. So we've got, and I have had a contract before, but that was when an issue occurred, and then I needed a contract to ensure it didn't occur again. Where I've kind of like found a way that we can implement a contract, but in a really, I'm hoping a really nice way, so it'll be well received. So I'll let you know how it goes when we do it.
I'm only asking, I did mine a couple of weeks ago, and it was strange. It was really strange, but actually, I think the point we got to was they made the agreements. They gave the time frames rather than me giving them the time frames, and then I wrote it all down and made them sign something as well. So we'll see how it goes.
Very good.
I think it's probably more powerful if it's coming from them, isn't it? So
it's like, okay, we've put a plan in place. These are the 3 projects we're going to work on: short term, medium term, long term. How long do we need to get this done, bearing in mind this is what we've got to do? And they came up with the time frames and agreed with them. So I'll let you know in 4 weeks how that's gone, if it's it or not.
Yeah, good. Very good. And you said here it was a bit awkward at first, did you say? But
I think because they've never done it before and they've never had this much attention, they've sort of been left to their own devices.
Yeah.
I actually went through all their business plans yesterday. Was it yesterday, day before yesterday? And it's become very apparent that one of them isn't performing as they should, because they've been sort of left. So it's a case of we're going to just have a look at that over the next month or two. But it may well be that it's so obvious this person might be, and this is one of my challenges for you guys. I've never had to exit someone from a business, so this is going to be one for me to. It might get to that. So
okay, yeah.
I know you said bring your challenges, so I'll stick it up first and say, right, that's one that I need to discuss today.
Okay, good. So this is poor managing under or poor performance, and how you then get to what's the process you go through, and potentially it could come to exit. Okay.
Can you get us on the Zoom call to while it's happening so we can kind of observe? Or
You're getting fired by public.
Could you record it? Could you record it, Iram?
It's terrible. It's like sticks out like a sore thumb.
I think what I'm interested in on that is obviously that highlights that they're not performing. Did they believe that they were performing until it was literally black and white in front of them, and then it was, or did you compare to the rest of the teams?
It's so what I've done is basically looked over the last 18. I don't mean to take over the conversation, but last 18 months, not call rate, I'm not into call rate, but meaningful opportunities and activities. And some of them I can go, right, you've got 30, you need to cut it down to 15, or between 10 and 15. 30 is too many to concentrate on. One of them is concentrating too much on dermatology, not enough on ophthalmology, which is fine. We can work with that because we've had a change in direction with the business. The other one, he's really great, but he's got values and behaviours issues. So we've put values and behaviours into our contract. So that's one that I can work with him. But then this last one is you just can't get anything from him. He doesn't take part in things. His opportunities are very, very low value. All of them are, out of 20, 10 were unrealised opportunities with no reason as to why. So we've got a larger discussion. I think it's 25th I'm seeing him in the office. It feels so awkward. And it really just to go through, what have you done in 18 months? But I think the difficulty for me is, because they've not had the attention, do you give them a chance? Is anything going to change in a month or two when you've had 18 months, or do you just cut your losses?
How long has the person been with the business?
18 months.
Okay. So under the 2-year mark.
And so I've done everybody's over 18 months. So it's apples with apples. They've all got the same time frame to look at what's everybody done. Yeah. And this one particular person is just, for 18 months, not done very much. Funnily enough, he came from dental. I'm not being offensive, but he came from dental into med devices, and I don't think he's taken to it probably with the attitude that he should have done. But then, it's a case of, is it the fault of the management that haven't done anything for 18 months with him? And I've come in and I'm looking at it and thinking, you're not performing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, what are the options? What do I do now? This one person.
Right, good, nice challenge to have, Iram. We'll look at that today. So, I've got some stuff that will be useful, and the group will have some useful insights as well, in terms of performance management and how do you get a corrective course of action in place so that you and they can make a decision on whether or not it's going to work.
Yes.
Within, really, you've got a 1 to 3 month window.
Yeah.
You want to be making a decision within 1 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. We can definitely cover that today, Iram. Okay, good. Nice. We've got a challenge laid out straight away. And it'll be useful for everybody on the call, right? Because if you're not going through it now, at some point in your leadership career, you will go through it. Right? It's one of those things. It just, these things happen. Okay, good. Thanks, Iram. Have I missed anybody? No? Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, so we will pick that up as well. Iram, remind me that we need to pick that up during the course of the session. If I don't pick it up, please. Okay,
thanks.
Okay, good. Excellent. So just a reminder of a couple of things. The scorecard that you took with your kind of coaching leaders assessment. So you've got your PDF report. So just as a kind of background check for the work that you're doing and the focus that you have. The toolkit that we've got, where you're using the different tabs and different assets in that toolkit, just to capture your thoughts and guide the approach that you're going to take in leadership. And the access to the online program. So I don't know if if anyone's had a chance to look at the online program, but lots of the discussion points that we'll have, and we'll cover them as part of our workshops, but a lot of the principles will be included in the videos on that online program. And they are all, for those of you who have started to work through them, they're kind of short 10-15 minute videos where it just talks you through the principle. Some of them are longer where it comes to coaching and the different coaching styles, but the contracting principles, the setting a plan with your team, the setting clear expectations, the rhythm of regular review, all of that is on there. We'll talk through these as we go through all of our workshops, but if you want a fast track to some of this stuff, it's all in the online platform. Okay. So you know the login, and of course we've got a WhatsApp chat. So I think we're all in there. We're all active in there. But if you need anything in there, if anybody wants to message me privately, I've had a couple of people do this, so and I'm very open to it. So if you've got a particularly thorny issue, something's going on, and you just need another set of eyes on it, feel free to just drop me a private message and say, Justin, this is happening. I'd love a bit of advice, and I'll either drop you a voice note back, or if you want a quick call or whatever. I'm very happy to support you as we go through the next 12 months, because stuff always comes up, right? And this is what we had in our first session. So these are the challenges that came up. So a reminder of the things that we are looking to address as we go through the next 12 months. First one is really common, right, for all of us. I think we can all relate to this: handling the imposter syndrome. And we talked about this in a number of ways. One of the ways was so that we get honest feedback from our teams, so that we are the combination of approachable enough but authoritative enough so that our teams can give us honest, candid feedback. Okay, so that was an important distinction. Team personality clashes and handling the issues that we might find between team members, whether it's arguments, resentment, whatever that is. How do we handle that with team members? And we do that through different leadership styles. So we'll talk about that in another session. We'll talk about affiliative leadership, where we are there to broker the relationships of the team. It's a style that we adopt through the interactions with our teams. Then we talked about kind of issues with different functions and departments that we don't manage. And how do we get our teams and those other teams to cooperate more fully? So cooperation between different functions in our businesses. We then talked about recruitment and the optimal approach to recruitment, so that we can understand, team, business, and role fit. So when someone's coming in, will they fit within our team? Will they fit in the business? And will they be able to do the job that we need them to do? And making sure that we have a robust process for recruitment. So we can absolutely workshop that in one of our full days together, perhaps a session on recruitment and the best approach to recruitment. And I'm sure you will have done a lot of recruitment. I've done a lot of recruitment in the past. My second sales management role, I picked up a team of 3 and had to build out a team of 9. So I basically had to take on 6 new people, and I did a lot of interviewing. I spent a year doing nothing but interviewing until I got those 6 people in place. I must have interviewed, I don't know, well over 100 people. And we had a really robust, it was when I was at 3M, really robust interview process, really robust kind of set of, we did initial screening, then interview, then assessment day, then offer. So it was quite a robust process. I wouldn't necessarily think you need to go through all of that, but there are principles that I learned through that process that are really useful for recruitment. So we can definitely cover some of those. And then knowing when to step back versus when to step in with our teams, knowing when to step back versus when to step in. And you will get this through the different modules and through the coaching approach. And largely, a lot of this will be the agreement that you have in the contract with your team members about when you and they have agreed, you'll either step back or step in. So to have that discussion with them as part of your contract could be really useful. And then finally, maintaining team focus and momentum. And we won't get to this today, but when you get to the action and observation stage in the model, in the coach model, there's a really nice document in there called, actually it's a combination of the objectives and goals, which you'll see there's a tool in there called a 133, and then the action and observation, where there's a document for you if you're in a sales leadership role to do field visit reporting with sales team members. And if you're not, then a document that helps you to start to become more aware of those situations where you're perhaps jumping in and you should be stepping back, and how you're going to, you and your team, get to this point where you can become the observer rather than taking action all the time. So there's a couple of tools in the toolkit that will really help you with that. Okay, and we talked about a couple of principles. We've got our Plan 2 framework principle, which we'll go into in more detail. So two models we use, this Plan 2 framework where we get strategy right and tactics right, and we do it from a business perspective and us as leaders, and we do it from a team member perspective so that their strategy and tactics are aligned with ours and the businesses. Okay, and it sounds obvious, but when we take a more deliberate approach around it, we get much better clarity for us and for our teams. And then we talked about our coach model. So this is the model that we'll be using, the relationships at the heart of the model. We have a plan in place, which we've just discussed, that's strategy and tactics. Then we contract with our teams and get agreement on the contract. We set clear objectives and goals so that they are clear and we're clear. We make sure that they're the ones doing the action, and we find this distance to be able to step back and become observer so that the team can perform. We get the opportunity to see things they can't see, and from there we can coach for change. So we can only do the coaching if we do the action and observation. Otherwise we're kind of a bit blind to the situation. We get kind of stuck in it ourselves if we're not careful. And then the final stage is this elevation of their opportunity heroes in the making, and really helping them to become kind of to raise their own sights to this potential future that they have, where we inspire something bigger in them than they can see in themselves. So that's the model that we're going to work through over our 12-month period. Okay, so before we go any further with slides, just a quick check-in with you. So quick check-in. I'd love to hear from the conversation that you've had so far. Are there any things that you've kind of discovered that you think you either need to focus more on, or that you need some support with? We got the challenge from Iram with the particular kind of performance management. Anything else from anyone else in the group from your discussions so far?
I've got a colleague who is really struggling at the moment with imposter syndrome, and there's been some events in her personal life that has caused some anxiety issues. And this person is normally very bubbly, quite a high performer, but recently, within the last week, you can see that there's a lot of pressure, self-imposed pressure. Yeah. So it's, I guess, how to again find that balance between, do I need to step in, step back, and how to broach that initial conversation, really. We've got quite a good relationship anyway, so I think she'd be open to quite a candid conversation. Yeah, and she's told me what's happened and what she thinks is the cause behind her anxiety at home, but this is now triggering some personal issues at work as well. So I'd like to try and address that sooner rather than later, before the pressure cooker kind of blows. Yeah. Okay. And catch it while there's an opportunity to get it under control, rather than when it gets to a point where it perhaps is off the rails. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What are you thinking? What are you thinking about that, Tim? What are you thinking you'll do? My initial thoughts were to have an offline, one-to-one kind of informal conversation, not at work, at a place where she's comfortable to have that conversation. Yeah. Establish. I'm not qualified enough to go down the sort of personal route, but at least let her have the opportunity to explain, the situation. But what I'm going to try and do is have a look at what's on her workload and try and get her to go through what's the big picture kind of strategy stuff. What are you working on? Let's, between us, try and prioritize what you need to focus on, and what can we push out to the right that's not high importance, and you can tackle those issues another date, but let's just narrow down the workload so it's not quite so overwhelming. So that's kind of my initial thoughts. Okay, so a bit of prioritization. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, anybody got any ideas for Tim?
Can I wade in and just add a build on that? Because I've had not a dissimilar situation, Tim, actually. And it was really interesting because I was doing the contracting with one of my team members, and this individual I have a really great relationship with. She performs really well. She's fantastic. But she shares quite a lot of personal information with me. And she shared something in particular with me going on with her on a personal level that was quite sort of hard hitting, quite challenging to hear, that I can't leave because I have a duty of care to her mental and physical well-being to not leave that. But it's quite challenging to know. I don't know whether it's sort of an issue that you're having. It's quite challenging to know because I sort of left the meeting and I sort of broached it to her. I said, look, I'm really pleased that you've shared this with me. I don't want to apply any pressure on you at all, but I do have a duty of care. Now you've confided with me with this information. So what would you do kind of naturally in this situation? How would you sort of try to resolve it? So she said, well, I do X, Y, Z. And I said, right, okay. I'm going to just check in on you tomorrow and just check that you've done it. And anyway, it hasn't happened, which is a concern. So I'm sort of really worried about her. So I've sort of checked in this week and said, look, I just, I don't want to be a thorn in your side, but I care, just want to check that you're going to, and it's sort of becoming, I don't want it to become something where it affects our working relationship, but likewise, it's quite a dangerous situation. Oh. It's tricky, isn't it? Kind of, I guess I'm sorry not to take the situation back to me, but it's challenging to maintain that professional relationship whilst trying to be supportive with someone's personal circumstances. I don't know how to toe that line particularly well.
Yeah, no, that's the exact kind of conundrum that I'm in. But she confided in me something that's, a tragedy that kind of and her partner have recently gone through a couple of times, and that's I don't think it was dealt with by her at the time, and I think that's now a year later coming back to the forefront of her mind. So, and it's starting to impact her ability at work. So, yeah, it's a tricky one, definitely.
Yes, interesting. Oh, go on, Leah. Yeah.
I was just going to say, is there any support that HR or something can give to help assist with that personal situation? I don't know the situation, but do they need some kind of therapy sessions or something that might help? Because then that shows that you have an involvement without getting involved, because it's not becoming you're hosting them conversations, because that could be draining for you as a manager, and that might help her deal with that personally while getting herself back professionally, I'm thinking. And then I think for the imposter syndrome, I would steer her in, if she is in that mind frame, of course, because it is all about the mind frame, into there's some really good podcasts and books that help with women in leadership or women in high-end positions where they can work on imposter syndrome, because it is quite a big thing. So it and it's not something to be dismissed as, oh, you'll be fine. Maybe something that she might read and experience from someone else, or listen to a podcast that might help her to relate and understand, and park it in a way. And it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one.
Yeah, mental health issues, psychological issues are as important as physical issues. 100%, without a doubt.
I've been through very similar things in the past few years with my team, as Justin knows. And when it comes to personal issues, you've really got to step back. You can't advise that person. We very lucky at work, we have Bupa policies for all the team, and on there they do get therapy sessions free of charge. Well, not free of charge, it's within their thing. So you can, that's something from a work perspective that you can provide for your team.
Yeah.
We've also got a perk box. I don't know if anyone's heard of that.
Yeah.
Perk box is excellent for well-being and mental issues. They have lots of meditation, yoga. They've got lots of exercises, breathing exercises, and there's also a helpline there as well that people can ring. And then we also set up as a global initiative, we've got a separate helpline for work.
And Nicola, that's the
mental health line.
Yeah, I was going to.
Mental health issues are a real big problem these days.
Yeah.
Can anybody hear me?
Matt, go on.
Sorry, I just didn't know. I didn't want to interject because I was going to ask a similar thing to Ria, because it really depends on the size of your organisation. So sounds like Nicola and I work for larger organisations where they have all those things in place. You've got private healthcare. There's access to things, so you can direct somebody in a path that at least they get some support. Because I feel for like Tim and Gemma, they're taking on an issue where you're not qualified to deal with that. You know, you never went into your work environment thinking that you were going to try and help somebody with a personal or mental health problem. And as you just said, Nicola, those things are only becoming ever more prevalent. And I think part of the issue now is knowing how to handle it, how to direct it. Because once you take it on as a personal problem yourself, then it becomes, like Gemma, for example, you know, you don't want to become overwhelmed and consumed with how do I help this person, because you've still got your job to do.
Yeah, and I don't have an HR. I mean, I am HR, finance, everything. So it's a bit tricky, but they're really good ideas actually, Nicola, because we've been looking at kind of BUPA cover anyway. But that perk box sounds great. I think
perk box is great. You just pay per month, and you can reward your team as well as help them in that respect. There's lots of ideas on there.
That's a great suggestion, Nicola. I was going to say some form of employee assistance programs, because you can get them where they're like open, so you could just subscribe as a smaller organization to some form of employee assistance program. I think that's probably what Perkbox does, Nicola, isn't it?
And I'll tell you something as well, it's from a big organization where we've got private healthcare and all that sort of stuff. We have a couple of other things like Health Shield and things like that. And I did access the services about 18 months ago for my own personal use. Yeah. But the problem is the one that we used through work, they were like, well, is it a specific problem? Have you got a work-related issue? Have you got a dispute with another employee, etc.? And I was like, no, it's a personal issue, but I think it potentially could be affecting my work. And they were really unhelpful because they were like, unless you can put your finger on the actual, we can give you some sessions and deal with an individual issue, but we can't help you kind of unpick maybe where the problem, the root cause is. And that, for me, put me right off accessing the service again, because I was like, so if you've got somebody that's a little bit, I'm a bit shy, or a bit, intimidated, the imposter syndrome, I'm frightened to contact somebody who says, because I feel like they might turn around and go, you're the problem, sort of thing. So, I don't think everybody's experience is always that positive as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you might need a couple of resources.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that's worth bearing in mind. I think you're absolutely right. You shouldn't have to deal with this on your own. Okay, so it's not your responsibility to deal with on your own, but it is your opportunity to be able to signpost your people to the right resources, and then just check that they're accessing them and that the access to them is working. And there are a few things you could do. So imposter syndrome, we covered in our last session, we talked about mindset, didn't we? Do you remember? And one of the big things we talked about, if you remember, was that the mind cannot process a negative. Okay, so if I start to think and ruminate on negative thoughts, my mind will just continue that train of thought, and I can really start to undermine myself, right? Whether it's true or not. And the same is true that if I start to think about all the opportunities, all the great things I've done, all the times I've been successful, all the things that have worked out, that's where my train of thought starts to run, right? And sometimes we find ourselves, without realizing it, just following the wrong train of thought. And unless we interrupt it and start to think differently, we'll find ourselves in a negative spiral. One of the things that's really useful for imposter syndrome is to take an experience inventory, right? So to start to make a list of all the positive experiences, all of the great achievements, all of the successes, all of the things that I'm good at, and start to write them down and create this list and add to it daily. Here's something else I've recognized that I'm good at. Here's another experience that I had. Here's another battle that I fought and won. Here's another challenge that I faced but came through it. And when you build that out into a really long list and you just get circled back on it on a regular basis, it just starts to reinforce all the things you're capable of, not all the things that you think are undermining you and are going to trip you up. So it's such a simple exercise, but it's quite powerful. But you've got to get them, people, yourself, if you're doing it, or your team to do it, you've got to get them to not put any of the shit down. The only stuff that goes on that list is the good stuff, the achievements, the successes. And then the other thing that's really valuable is to get them to talk you through the list, because then they'll talk themselves into feeling better about themselves, how they're performing, what they're capable of, and what they can do in the future. And that can be really useful, like simple exercise that can help.
You're right. We forget, don't we, all the good stuff that we do.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was looking to get into a leadership role, I actually sat and went through the last maybe 2 or 3 years worth of work and thought, oh, I've done that project, I did that, I did this, and that gave me the confidence to start applying to leadership roles.
Yeah, great. So you've experienced it yourself, Iram. It really does help, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it really does help. And if any of you ever get that, like if you ever get a wobble, because we all have those days where you're like, oh shit, am I really able to do this, right? We all have those days. If you've got a list, if you've got your experiences inventory, right? These are all the things I've done in the past, and you pull that up and you just start reading it to yourself, it immediately gives you confidence back. It's remarkable. It really is remarkable. So it for your teams, for yourself, just as almost like a recalibrate. Let me recalibrate to a higher level of kind of positivity and self-confidence. It can be really valuable.
Can I just add, there's a book that I read a while ago, and it's it goes into sort of other sort of deep concepts, but it's called The Power of Now.
Eckhart Tolle,
and it's a really good book because it really addresses this kind of where these thoughts are coming from, and once you read it, it kind of gives you a greater understanding to be able to pull back when you identify basically when you're going down these paths, because sometimes you don't know it until you've gone down this really negative road. And it gives you these triggers to then bring you back into the now, and then it puts things into perspective. I found it really good, and I still use those sort of techniques sort of, all the time. So
I agree, Chris. So the
book called
The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I'll say it in the group.
Nice. Thanks.
Yeah, it's very good. Thanks. Good reminder, Chris. And if anybody got Audible, I listened to it on Audible. And it's a really interesting book. Don't listen to it while you're driving because he's got a very soothing voice. but it's also it's almost meditative when you're listening to it. It's very good. Thanks for the suggestion, Chris. That's great. Okay, good. So Nicola's put in the chat the link to Perkbox. Thank you, Nicola. That's great. Okay, so we're at 10:10. We've been going 40 minutes. Should we have a quick leg stretch? Comfort break, 5 minutes, so back after just after 10:15, and then we'll do our last 45 minutes. I've got some content I'd like to share with you today that just starts to think about kind of the way that we lead our teams and thinking about creating the right leadership environment for our team. So we'll come back and do that after the break. Oh yeah, hello.
Sorry to interrupt you. One of the things I'd like to do before we finish is just to get an idea, because like Iram and I haven't had our accountability call yet. We've put an hour in for tomorrow, like I say, to start that. Yeah, I'm just curious to know where you think we should be on the program, like a check-in sort of thing, because A, I don't want to drop behind, but C, I don't want to be charging ahead through all the content before everybody else, and then we're reviewing stuff that isn't. So it's just kind of keep us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So check in on kind of progress on the program. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. That's great. Thanks, Matt. On program. Yeah. Cool. And we'll look at Iram's performance management challenge before the end of today's session as well. Okay. Just to talk about some best practice around that. Good. Okay. Everyone, we'll take 5 minutes. Quick leg stretch. Grab a drink. See you back here in 5. Okay, so this will link to some work in your toolkit. So let's talk about kind of leadership action. So in terms of leaders, we know this already, right? But we're reminding ourselves what leadership is, right? It's about inspiring others to think bigger, dream more, do more, learn more, and if we can inspire that in people, then that pretty much is leadership, right? Our job is to inspire other people to become greater. And I talk about these 5 responsibilities of leadership. So if you go right back to the foundations of what we're trying to create as part of our leadership environment where teams can thrive, there are 5 key responsibilities. And the first one that I talk about is psychological safety. Okay, and you're already starting to see this with people coming to you saying, perhaps self-esteem, self-belief isn't quite where I'd like it to be. Imposter syndrome creeps in for everyone. It's just more talked about now. So we've all gone through it. If you think back in your career, we've all had those moments where you're like, God, can I do this? Who am I to even be in this room? How am I going to get through this situation? We've all been there, right? But our job as leaders is to create psychological safety so that people feel that they can have that conversation with us. So that when they do have that conversation, they're not berated or belittled or criticized. Actually, it's welcomed. And through that welcoming, you create psychological safety. And this always reminds me of my first job. And I'll always remember it. So I was starting my first job. I was there for 4 years. And between the kind of age of 18 and 22. And I was working in a laboratory for this guy. And he was kind of close to retirement. So he was like 62, 63. So he was an old guy in a lab. He was the boss. I was a 20-year-old lad, as big as I am now, 6'4", quite muscular, did a lot of martial arts, so I could look after myself. And this guy, if I got something wrong, he used to throw things at me, right? And at 20 years old, I would get to the point where I was actually quite frightened of him. So I'd walk into work and I'd be like, oh shit, what's going to happen today? Because sometimes he'd come in a really good mood and everything, and it'd be a great day. Other times he'd come in and he'd be in such a foul mood that he'd be throwing things around the place. It was unbelievable. And what we don't realize is that the way we act, the way we behave as leaders creates the culture, creates the environment, right? Nobody else can create that environment like us as leaders of businesses or leaders of teams. And so there's something about having this kind of intent to create psychological safety with our teams. And partly it's through the conversations we have and the role modeling we do, perhaps sometimes sharing our own vulnerabilities so that team members see that as something that is acceptable and normal in the culture. And sometimes it's about being open to that discussion and just creating the space so that people can share their thoughts. And it's also about creating the right values so that as leaders, if we see behaviors that perhaps do undermine people's psychological safety or confidence, then we just make sure we address them, right? So we make sure that everybody has this sense of psychological safety first, okay? Psychological safety first. Because many of us aren't working in jobs where physical safety is a concern. So psychological safety is the next kind of key area that we have to work on. And then once people feel safe and we feel safe in their presence and vice versa, right? Then it's about trust. It's about making sure that our team members trust us and that we trust them. So this is a two-way street, right? So it's not just about us having to be trustful of the other person, but it's about reciprocation of trust. And I just have this principle where I will trust people as an instinct. People will gain my trust very easily, and then it's theirs to break. Right? So I tend to trust people and it's theirs to break rather than be skeptical. And then people have to build that trust. I tend to trust first and then it's yours to build on, but it's also yours to break. And if you break it, then you get a couple of strikes and you're out.
And Justin, have you been burnt from that? Because I'm aware of people that have, and I've done it myself, been too trusting of people and it's backfired because they think that they can kind of like steer around you or go behind your back, so to speak. And you actually go, you bastard,
Yeah. This is why when you combine building a relationship of trust with contracting, right? So you have a contracting conversation that says, this is how I will treat you. You'll have my trust, but I expect it in return. And if there are situations that we need to address, I'm going to have the direct conversation with you. I'm going to address difficult challenges as they go along. I'm not going to kick them down the road. And that's part of building trust, Because remember, trust isn't just about being nice to people. Trust is challenging when you need to be challenged. That strengthens trust, right? So it's making sure that we get that equilibrium right between support and challenge. That's what really accelerates trust. So psychological safety first. People need to feel safe in our presence. They need to be able to come to us with ideas. They need to be able to ask stupid questions. They need to be able to make suggestions that won't work and still feel that it's okay to do that, because we want to encourage that, right? So psychological safety first. Build a relationship of trust, support and challenge in this two sides of the same coin, right? And then third is making sure that people are clear on what's expected of them. Remember, we said this was number one employee engagement indicator. I'm clear of what's expected of me at work. So really clear expectations and goals. I know what success looks like. I know what high performance looks like. I also know what poor performance looks like, and we need to avoid that, right? So clarity over what's expected and the goals that I've set. And then fourth is, as leaders, our ability to help our teams generate energy, motivation, and engagement, right? They have to do this for themselves, but as leaders, we can help them discover it through the conversations that we have, right? What energizes you? What motivates you? How do I help you increase your own engagement in the work? How do we make sure that the job really fulfills you? Make sure that it's aligned with your strengths and what you're best at and what we want to get from you and from the business at the same time. And it's to have these conversations. And we do this through leadership, right? Through coaching conversations with each of our teams. And energy, motivation, engagement is really important, because when energy is high, performance is high, right? So energy and performance, and intrinsic motivation and engagement in our work, right? So to have a leader that has that conversation with you can be really powerful, because you start to think for yourself and start to think, okay, well, how do I energize myself? How do I get motivation high? How do I fully engage in the job? And then the fifth area that we think about is growth and development. So these are layers, right? Once the first four are in place, then it's about, okay, how do I grow to become, as high a performer as possible? How do I develop skills? How do I keep this ongoing process of improvement for myself, so that actually I'm going to meet the highest standards of performance that I can reach? And so you think about these 5 layers, and there'll be people in your teams where you kind of think, that's in place. Perhaps that's not as clear as it should be. Perhaps I haven't had the intention around energy. Perhaps we need to go back and have a conversation about growth and development. So this is about awareness for you, and to start to think about how you can start to work through this with your teams. There's a tool that we'll look at shortly. And, there's always a balance to be had with management and leadership of teams. And there's this principle called the performance curve, and the difference between what they call eustress and distress. And really what we think about is, if you think about this curve, on the bottom x-axis, we've got stress and pressure levels, right? Stress and pressure levels. So at the left is like low stress and pressure. At the right-hand side, there's high stress and pressure. And then on the left-hand side, the y-axis, we've got performance and purpose, okay? And so stress is like a curve. It's like a curve on a chart. And at the bottom end, you've got people, without enough stress and without enough purpose and ability to perform. You end up with people that are a bit bored, and they go from bored to feeling calm in their work. And then on the right hand side, with too much stress or pressure, you get people that tip over the edge and they start to feel distressed. Tim talked about helping his colleague to just start to prioritize, right? When someone's at this end of the spectrum, distress, which can tip over into anxiety, absolutely get them back to basic foundation performance principles, prioritization. What are you really good at? Let's get you focused on that. Pick off tasks one at a time. Just simplify things. But what we want to do is hit this middle zone, and they call this middle zone eustress, positive stress, right? So it's the right amount of stress that triggers me into positive action, makes me feel good. I set a deadline that I can hit, and I'm able to do my best work. And and depending on your leadership style, you tend to find you've got the like laissez-faire type Z leader, you've got the dictatorial type X leader, high pressure, sometimes pace setter, and then you've got the coaching leader in the middle that tries to really broker this balance between sufficient pressure so that people feel motivated, not so much pressure that they tip over the edge and start to feel distress. And really we end up with this zone of optimal performance. And it's difficult to stay in this middle zone all the time. You might find things, people will drift one way or the other. Our job as leaders is just to keep bringing them back to this zone of optimal performance, bring them back to that middle zone. And we do that through the conversations that we have with them, even sharing this type of information to say, you know, I'm conscious that this is how performance works on a performance curve. Where we want to get to is this zone of optimal performance. I want to do that through the support and challenge I provide for you. Let me know if it's going too far one way or the other.
I was just going to ask that question, Justin, because I had the same conversation with my team last week about the pace of work, because I've put certain actions in place. My question is, obviously, some people have said, oh yeah, it's fine. And this one person that we're going to speak about later has said, oh yeah, that's fine, but I just need more time to do it. How do you then assess whether your pace is too fast or you are causing them to go too much into distress and having to pull it back? So how would you manage that? Because everyone's going to have a different opinion, aren't they?
Yeah, you manage it through the conversations with them. You know, and sometimes you do it through the conversations with them and your intuition. Because you also have to be intuitive around, okay, is what I'm hearing, you know, accurate and right? Everybody's going to perform at a different level. You're absolutely right. We have to tune into that.
Well, when we go back to personalities as well, I'm very much, so again, I did the whole insights thing with my team and they're all very different. And I'm a complete red yellow. And for me, I work and I thrive off quite a fast-paced environment, but I know not everybody does. And I really struggle with kind of managing that with people that don't work at the same rate as I do.
Yeah. And I do, or have done too, Iramot. So I'm red yellow too. And I've managed, one of the most challenging situations I've had is where I managed an IT business, and we had a team of coders who were all kind of blue.
Yeah.
So,
this guy's a blue as well, actually. The one we're going to discuss is a blue, almost a bit too laid back. And so this is where I really struggle with keeping it in the middle of this chart that you've got here.
Yeah.
Comment on that. Sorry, comment on that. I see that within our team. We've got some really high performers who work at a really high pace consistently.
Yeah.
They look at the other guys that maybe work at a lower pace, aren't performing, and they're like, well, especially because we work on a team commission, and it causes some animosity because, hold on a minute, I'm bringing in more revenue. They're sitting there working half the pace of me and creaming off the top, so to speak. But then, you know, like you said, not everybody can work at the same performance. You know, if you're getting the best out of a person, that's the best you're going to get out of them, but they're still delivering, but you've got your real top performers.
Yeah.
How do you manage that, you know, inter-team relationship that doesn't cause like bad feeling?
Well, that's the thing with this guy, he's not performing and he's a blue.
Yeah. So we'll so in terms of some principles that's worth discussing, right? So everyone's performance is going to be different. Everybody will have strengths that are in different areas, right? So if you've got someone who is more typically introverted and you know, if you think about insights, I don't know if everybody knows the insights wheel, but basically from left to right, on the right hand side you've got red and yellow, which is like high extrovert, high pace, high dynamism. And on the left-hand side of the chart, you've got blue-green, which is more introvert, which is not necessarily a slower pace, but more methodical. Okay, so I need all the information before I take action. I'd have to make sure that I've got everything in place before I make a start, because I don't feel confident to figure it out on the way. It's just natural personality types, right?
Interesting. Can I just add something a little?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
I mean, isn't it quite common across pretty much all organisations that they will naturally fall into that sort of 80-20 rule?
In terms of performance.
Yeah, but performance. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get the best performance for 20% of the people. 80% will bring, the rest will bring in the 80%. So I think I wouldn't beat yourself up by not everyone bringing in that that 100% kind of performance. It's never going to happen. It's just not. It just doesn't happen like that.
Well, there's one thing about performance, but the other thing is I'm looking at this chart and how do we measure how everyone's feeling if you've got somebody who's quite introverted, needs all the information, and then it's almost affecting his performance because they just can't, because there's loads of charts. There's another one I did with the Oxford group, and it was about almost it's being detrimental because they're thinking too much about things and they can't manage to move themselves along. So on this chart, where do you then give them the extra stress to move them along and make a decision?
I think, just stepping in here, I think because we did the DISC training recently, and that really helped me in particular with who I thought was like, I don't know how to word this person, but I don't want to say an annoyance, but he definitely worked my nerve. But I think I was able to understand once I was able to see how he worked, we work complete opposite. And it sounds like you and this colleague are the exact opposite. So you might need to find an understanding of how, because there will be some common denominator of how you can work together. He is obviously not high performing, but what is his positives? Because then if you can hone in on his positives, that might help you understand how you work with him to get a better result out of him, because maybe there's frustration there. I don't know, has he said if there's frustration?
No, but he, like I say, he's quite introverted, but again, if you go back to look at his I'm not trying to take over the conversation again, and but it's you look at his opportunities and things just aren't moving along. Everything's very negative. And when we talk about outside of work, he's very much a family man, and he just wants to come to work and do his job and go home and not stress about it. So it's trying to work all these different elements of this one person who's never really had any attention since he started in the whole 18 months. And then I'm looking at this chart that you've got here, and I'm thinking maybe I need to try and use this to stress him a bit more in a positive way to get action out of him. And it's just, how do I measure that?
I would say, Aaron, so let's go back a slide. Once these 5 things are in place, and in particular, point number 3, because there's an argument to say the reason he is where he is because he wasn't clear on what was expected of him.
Exactly.
So if he thinks he's delivered, it's because he wasn't clear on what was expected. And as we go back, so you absolutely have to think about the amount of challenge you give to people. You have to have it as a conversation. You also have to recognize that different people have different strengths. So this guy that is more introverted, he will have strengths that your extroverts don't have. And there's a question about how do you play to those strengths? How do you help him see those strengths? And then where he might have some challenges around, actually, he's probably got a really nice plan in place. He's probably got some really great documentation. It all looks really neat, but he's not actually getting out there and doing the job, right? It's one of the potential drawbacks of that more introverted tendencies. Just then you'll need some support. Okay, so what does it look like now that your plan's in place? It's robust, it's good enough. What does it look like for you to, be more proactive with your outbound inquiries or with moving these opportunities along? Have the conversation and set some really clear goals about what the leading activities look like, right? Because one of the challenges of managing sales teams is you can't just manage them to numbers, i.e. sales numbers. It doesn't stand up. What you have to do is get back to the activities that they perform that you and they are confident are going to deliver the progress in results or performance, so that you then start to see the sales results. So how many activities, how many outbound calls, how many face-to-face customer meetings, what size of opportunity, how fast should an opportunity progress? Sit down and agree all that with.
I think that's the one. How fast should it progress? Because the opportunities have got that he has or has had in the past a very low value very slow moving.
Yeah.
So it's a case of looking at size of opportunity and maybe putting a time frame around, okay, that's the size. If it doesn't come off in 3 to 6 months, then you need to close that opportunity and find a new one to replace it. I think that's probably the support he's not had.
Yeah, and there'll be something, Irma, about average opportunities across the team.
Yeah.
If they're in similar roles, right? If you've got
Yeah.
a team in similar roles, average size opportunities, so that you can say, right, average opportunity is 50K or whatever the number is, right? Yours are sitting at 20K. Have the conversation. Look at the gap.
To give you an idea, average is around anywhere between 25 and 60, and here's a £2,500.
There you go. So that's a great conversation to have, right? So you can now start to have very clear conversations about expectations. The expectation is that average opportunity size is between 25 and 60,000, not 2.5. Right. So how we're going to raise your performance, raise the opportunities, and increase the potential for sales and growth, and then you've got opportunities. Like, what you don't want is for him to just go in and change all the numbers from 2.5 to 25, right?
Yeah.
So real solid opportunities, conversations with customers to have assessed the size of the opportunity, or some data from the account to assess the size of the opportunity, and then start to think about the key actions that he needs to take. And number one thing, make sure it's all documented.
Yeah.
Make sure it's documented, because when you start on a performance management kind of journey, the big thing is that if it does end up with a termination, and there is, if there's a likelihood that it does, at that point, you need a dossier of evidence to say, here's the clarity that I've provided, together with this person, around what was expected, and they signed up to what was expected, and you can clearly see that they haven't met the expectations that we agreed together.
Yeah.
Is this not feeding into a PIP though? Is this not basically you're building a PIP, although you're not telling them they're on a PIP?
I would actually tell them they're on a PIP. So PIP is performance improvement plan. Okay.
You have to tell them, don't you?
You have to tell them, you have to tell them. So that first meeting, Iram, and I don't know if you've got a performance improvement plan process.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at their documents, they've got a disciplinary process, but to be honest, my personal feeling is I don't think much will change in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. But then I suppose if you don't give somebody the opportunity, you'd never know.
Yeah, and you in a way, you've kind of, for your own experience, it's good to go through the process.
Yeah.
Right? Good to go through the process. So the process starts with the creation of a performance improvement plan. Okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully your organization's got a template for this, but it starts with a performance improvement plan where you basically strip expectations back to a core 3 to 5 things.
Yeah.
Right. So forget all the other noise, all the other stuff that's going on. Right. We're going right back to foundations. These are the 5 things I need you to do and to prove to me that you can perform. Right. You have that conversation with the person, and in that conversation, you'll talk about the difference in your opportunity size. You talk about the difference in the time it takes to close opportunities. You might talk about the difference in activity rates, things that you see, and there'll be your 5 things that person's got to improve.
Yeah,
you get them to agree to it, and once they've agreed to it, you also have to say to them, "This is a performance improvement process, and I have to explain to you that." If your performance doesn't improve, there is a possibility that we will go to a formal disciplinary procedure.
Yeah.
Okay. And normally that's the point at which the person goes, "Shit, this is serious."
Yeah. Well, he might volunteer himself to leave.
Well, and that the thing that happens then is people either get performance back on track.
Yeah.
Or if they don't, they tend to start looking for an exit themselves.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that most people that go on a PIP do end up leaving the business. That's what I've seen. It's a high probability, because even if your performance starts improving, you then start getting the imposter syndrome. I can't do this, I must be crap because I'm on a performance. So do you know what? Why don't I go and leave, go to another establishment?
And is it worth then saying to them as well, is once you've gone through all that, you tell me what support you need to get you where you need to be.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion.
It's sort of in their court then. So if
Yeah.
they need, it's all been laid out for them. If they need support, then that's the time to speak, isn't it? Well, I can do with this help or that help, and then you've done all you can in your power to assist them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree, Chris. Yeah, great suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay, is that useful? But the big thing here, document everything, right?
Yeah.
So when I first started performance management, I had a great HR manager who worked with me on it. I started just a simple Excel spreadsheet that was an issue log. Okay, date, so name of the person, employee number, all that stuff, right? Date, nature of the issue, and then what happened, what I've done about it. Okay, nature of the issue, what happened, what I've done about it, and then so I just had this log. And what that does is it also gives you clarity. It's a bit like our experiences inventory, where you go back and go, look at all the great things I've done. When you start an issue log with somebody, you start to think, oh my God, look at all this stuff that's compounding. You start to see it for what it is. Actually, there's clearly a series of issues.
Yeah.
Very often they'll be behavioral. Okay, so a lot of it is behavior. They're either not doing the job, or there's an attitude towards the job, or there are comments and behaviors that you're seeing that once you start to log them, you can address them, and you can address them, almost you'll see themes. It just really helps you get clarity over it. Okay, that's good. And the big thing is leverage, right? And I've talked about this in the past as well, making sure people realize this is serious. Okay, so we've got to a point where it is serious. I need to see a change. And to Chris's point, what do you need? What support do you need from me so that you can make this change?
Yeah.
It's not your change to make, it's their change to make.
Yes,
right?
it's passing the baton back to them, isn't it?
Exactly. This is yours to pick up. I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
It's yours to pick up ultimately. And this is whites of the eyes stuff. Give them some space, let them talk. The other thing, I can't remember whether we talked about this, but it's worth explaining. When I did insights training, the big difference between introvert and extrovert, I can't remember if I mentioned this on the day, but extroverts talk while they're processing information. Right? We talk while we're processing. Introverts find that really difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
They have to stop, reflect, process, then talk about it. Right? So if you as an extrovert manager leader managing an introverted team or introverted members of your team, you've got to remember to shut up, let them do some processing, be comfortable with some silence, and then let them explain.
Yeah.
Because if you put them under pressure, here and they need to stop and think, right? Next slide's quite interesting. If you look at what happens under stress, your brain actually pulls all the blood supply from your thinking brain, the neocortex, and draws it back into the reptilian brain.
Yeah.
So actually stress, when we put people under pressure and stress, like right at the right-hand side of this chart, they actually become less capable of thinking and doing the things they need to do. So stress makes you less capable, makes you stupid, right? Stress makes you stupid. So in situations, we need to almost say to someone who's going to be under a lot of pressure in that conversation, so look, for a moment, just stop, pause, reflect, and I need you just to think, what is it you need to do? Okay, take the pressure off yourself for a moment, think with clarity. What is it you need to do? And they'll be able to tell you.
Okay.
Right? Because if you don't create that space, you'll probably just get agreement in the moment and then no change. You really want to create the space to get the commitment, let him process it and tell you what he's going to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know, Erin, we're talking about this one particular situation, but everybody think about this for different conversations you might need to have with your teams. It's going to be relevant for different people. As we're talking about that, creating the optimal amount of stress, thinking about the right amount of pressure, but not so much pressure that somebody kind of tips over and then literally can't perform. We've all been there, right? Where you're going to go a bit stupid in the moment under real pressure. It's like, God, what did I say that for, right? It's the stress it's literally your brain is drawing from the thinking, all the blood supply from the thinking brain back into the reptilian brain, and you turn into a bit of a numpty. Happens to me on occasion. Okay, good. So a couple of other things, and then I'll introduce you to the tool. Some of you might have seen this before. Worth remembering. So I teach this principle not only from a leadership perspective, but also from a sales perspective, right? So in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, one of the principles is around the emotional bank account, okay? The emotional bank account are the relationships we have with people and thinking about them as bank accounts, right? Thinking about the deposits that we make in those relationships with our team, and thinking that when we've got sufficient credit and when we've had the right level of trust developed in our relationships with our team, then we can start to withdraw. So we can give critical feedback. We can do the things that we might need to do to challenge them, to turn up the pressure on performance, right? But we have to do it with this equilibrium of the credit in the account, in the relationship, the emotional relationship with us and the team members. And if we do get overdrawn, if we perhaps overstep the mark from time to time, it's easily done, right? We just make sure that we drop the deposit back in, and we apologize, or we make good on that situation with our teams. And we just want to make sure that we've always got a positive credit in all accounts with all members of our team, and just asking ourselves the sense check question: am I in credit or debit or debt with this member of my team? You'll know whether or not you've put too much in and haven't asked for enough, or you've asked for too much and you haven't put enough in. You'll know. And think about improving and increasing the account balance. And sometimes actually not increase, it should be improve, right? Because this isn't just about dropping deposits into team members. This is about using the relationship in the way that it's meant to be used. As leaders, our job is to help people to get to higher levels of performance. Sometimes that means challenging them a bit harder, right? And so we should make sure that we're continually managing that emotional bank account, the right amount of challenge, the right amount of support. These two things really do go hand in hand. And through this, we earn this position as a leader to challenge them, to be direct, to make requests, to hold them accountable, and to lead this organization, right? And there are times when we might have to just take stock and help people see where they are in terms of that account balance. If we've made a lot of investments in them and they've not really responded to that, or they've not really delivered on that, we'll have to have a conversation. And maybe it's a recontracting conversation that we then have with them. Okay, and there's a really nice tool in the book. There's a piece around, there's a slide, I'll send you these slides after. It's a piece around how you create the right amount of stress. We talked about our 5 kind of principles of culture, developing the right culture, but making sure people are clear on the vision, mission and values of our organization. Make sure they're clear on their job. Make sure the goals and expectations are clear, that we're regularly reviewing performance with them. So they've got this chance for feedback, praise, bit of challenge, right? Make sure that we're training them in the right areas and coaching them on it, so that they've got this opportunity to elevate performance. Make sure we're trusting them, we're listening them, we're giving and receiving feedback from them. We're asking them and then supporting them and challenging them. So asking them about stress. Am I giving you enough challenge right now? You can do that with a smile on your face, right? Am I challenging you enough in your role right now? Because especially for high performers, right? When I'm in a team and I'm working with a manager and I know I've still got a bit more to give. It's been very rare occasion, but a manager said to me, am I giving you enough challenge right now? And you have a smile, and you think, do I want more? And you go, actually, I've probably got another 20% in me. It's really interesting. When you have a conversation with someone and they say, I've probably got another 20% in me, it opens the door to a bit more kind of challenge on your part, higher performance on theirs. So it's an interesting conversation to have with someone. Am I challenging you enough in your role right now? And if they say no, that's a great conversation to start to have, right?
I found really interesting in my connects with two of my team members that I think I was so conscious of applying too much pressure to them, but actually what I recognized is that one of them wanted more responsibility and the other one was like, yeah, give me more. Like I'd given her a bit more responsibility with something. She was like, I want more of that. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I was so positive.
It's great. Well done, Gemma. And isn't it amazing? You have to have the conversation, because people, your team won't necessarily come to you with that until you ask, right? But asking surfaces it. Just having the conversation surfaces that ability to elevate performance, delegate a bit more. Yeah, very good.
That's exactly why I'm on this course, because I raised my hand and said I want more leadership responsibility. If I hadn't done that, I'd still be just doing an account exec's role, and probably would have got overlooked for, you know.
Yeah. And interesting, isn't it, Matt? You raised your hand for it, but as leaders, right, we've got this ability to help people to step up and give us that feedback earlier, sooner. Have the conversation, because they might not be thinking about it themselves. It's the conversation with us that draws it from them. Yeah, it's great. So there's this team review document in your toolkit, okay? And there's an example document where you'll see I've kind of said this is what it looks like. So you've got the team member put their initials in there, and then you just review your team, right? So where are they on this is a scale of 1 to 10. Where are they in terms of psychological safety right now? And do I need to have a conversation to help and develop that? Where are they in terms of the trust in our relationship? And that might be, do you trust them? Do they trust you? How clear are goals and expectations for them? What's energy, motivation, and engagement like? Where are they in terms of growth and development? Am I seeing them growing, improving, performing at a higher level, developing themselves? And where are we in terms of the emotional bank account? And then you just got this really simple, okay, what am I going to do then to start to address some of these scores that I've logged in? You don't have to share this with your team, by the way. This is it's like a management document, okay? And it just helps you to start to think about, okay, what approach will I take so that I'm tailoring it to the individual in my team? So we just treat everybody the way they need to be treated based on that review document. So you've got blank template there, and kind of optional exercise, but it might be a useful exercise to go through. Just log your team, give them a score on 1 to 10, think about the actions you require, and then you can pick this up in your accountability discussions with your partners between now and next month. Okay.
Justin, can I just ask something? It's a bit sort of off this topic, but it's I just wondered if you're going to cover it. In a lot of businesses, you've got different departments, whether it's sales or support, and they often can slip into silos. And I know a lot of businesses I've worked in, you know, that there's a bit of them and us happening there. Yeah. We've had a small incident this last couple of weeks. We're pretty flat, you know, our business. So I think that will be easy to manage. But I know some of the guys on the course here, you know, work in bigger organizations, and I'm just interested to see your view, because this course is about, obviously you've got your team, it's about working with your team, getting the best performance, but what you often find is there are other teams like support, for instance, that you have to work with, and it's all well and good getting your team on board, but what's your thoughts on, and why is this a bit of a problem? And two, how do you then engage other teams which you don't manage, and obviously they've got their own managers, to try and bring those closer together? Will you be covering that?
Yeah, we can do, Chris. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for me, it's all about the first principles, you know, control what you can control. Okay. If you can control the performance and the attitude and the positivity of your team, absolutely get that in place first. Then if you need to help support with communication, engagement of other divisions, departments, functions, my preference is do it through the leadership, then take it down through to the team. Right? Okay. Do it through leadership, then down through the team. And sometimes you might find that a peer of yours, another sales leader, department head, department leader, actually they're unaware of some of the challenges that are happening, or they're aware and they're not sure what to do about them. And so your conversation with them can help them, almost like our accountability discussions, to start to pick up the mantle, start to think about, okay, how do we make the changes that we need to make to improve performance? So I'd absolutely take it on, but really you want to get your own house in order first, make sure your team are performing, make sure everything you're doing is right, then pick up the leadership conversation and then support that leader to make those improvements with their team. That's my advice. I've done that in the past. It's good. Thanks, Chris. Good question. Matt, your question was about checking on progress on the programme. The way I see it is that it's entirely up to you how fast you work through that content. I'm a firm believer in getting through everything and then going back and covering it again. So my advice would be go through it once, then come back and work out, right, what are the key areas where we need to focus in on and deep dive. And we'll work through that as we go through our session. So don't worry about getting too far ahead of yourself. Absolutely get through the content, then we'll go through it and cover it in depth in our sessions. Okay, we are at 1 minute to 11, believe it or not. 1 minute to 11. So final check-in then. So if I can ask you to have a look at the toolkit, think about that additional tool, have conversations with each other, continue your accountability discussions. We'll be together again in a month. Between now and then, if anything comes up, feel free to contact me, use the WhatsApp group, or if there's any other challenges or anything else that you want to pick up with this group, then feel free to do it through our chat. We are at 11 o'clock, so if anybody's got a hard stop and needs to go, please go. If anybody wants to hang on, they've got a question, just I'm happy to hang around for another 5 or 10 minutes. So entirely up to you guys. So you're free to go now if you want to.
Thanks, Justin. I've got to dash.
Thanks, Ted. See you later.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, everyone. Bye.
I've got to shoot.
Thanks.